If you have ever wanted to build an app that will help you make sales calls based on your shop data, that is exactly what we're going to be building today. Users will be able to pick multiple options they are interested in, input their phone numbers, and an AI sales bot will give them a call and suggest an item from your shop database. That's right. So for example, if I pick outdoor products and retro, as well as give my phone number as a prospecting client, the AI will do a vector search on my shop inventory that we have stored in a database and respond suggesting the most similar item to your choice. So it could give you a call saying,
I noticed you're interested in outdoor products with a retro style. I'd like to recommend the stylish Camping Ming's Mark RC4 reversible classical patio mat 8 feet by 20 feet. It's a fantastic combination of elegance and functionality, perfect for enhancing your outdoor space.
and we can even add an option for the user to request a callback from an actual human if you wish. So add,
Would you like us to call you about this?
the goal of this app is for you to pick up leads that will actually want to buy something. So have the AI entice and filter out keen users before they actually get to speak to you. Of course, this is just an example app based on my furniture shop inventory. Once completing this app, you can use what we learned today and the template to cater it towards your specific business needs. So have an AI that suggests real estate properties maybe, or simply cold calls a potential list of leads that you already have. The world of possibilities is really endless, and I would absolutely love to see how you take this app, build on it, make it your own. Please do share your final products with me when you are done, because I would absolutely love to see what business cases you came up with. Okay, so a lot to do for this project. We are first going to create a vector database using SingleStore, which will allow us to search for similar items. Then we will move on to building a Next.js app that will allow us to perform semantic search on our database. And then we will build out the front end of our app, as well as pass the results of our similar items through OpenAI using GPT-4o in order to make a human-like response. And finally, we will use a free trial version of Cinch to help us make outgoing calls to users. No credit cards will be required for this course as long as you're using the free tiers, so I'm excited. Let's do it. Okay, so first off, SingleStore is the database management system that we'll be using, where we're going to store all our data, okay, so all our data as well as vector embeddings of our data. Don't worry if you don't know what this means, because I'm going to be explaining it in a bit. So first off, please try this for free. I've of course already signed up, so I'm going to sign in, which means I can access my portal, which looks like this. Please use the link in the video description below in order to get to the same place as I am now. Great. So here we are. The first thing we're going to have to do is create a group. So I'm going to create a group here. I'm going to call this sales bot, just like so, and then I'm going to pick a cloud provider. I'm just going to go with the default AWS option, and then of course you can pick a region. I'm just going to go with the closest one to me, so I'm going to go with Mumbai, and let's hit next. Okay, great. My workspace is called workspace 1. I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and create our workspace. So amazing. Here is the sales bot group. And you will see my workspace is here. It's called Workspace 1. And in here, you will be able to see databases. At the moment, we don't have anything in there quite yet. We're going to create that. So in order to create the database using some data, as well as create embeddings from that data, we're actually going to write a Python script. So don't worry if you've not done any Python at all. I know this is a JavaScript channel mainly, but I'm going to walk you through it. So even someone who's never touched Python before will be able to learn a little bit of it today. So under personal notebooks, make sure that under notebooks, you go to personal right here. Just create a notebook. You can call it whatever you wish. I'm going to call it sales. That is up to you. Whatever you wish to call it is a personal notebook, and just go with blank notebook because we're going to start from scratch. So just create that. Okay, so great. This is what it looks like at the moment. Okay, it's empty. Just make sure you have the correct workspace selected from the drop down here. So first things first, we're going to have to install a few libraries. So I'm actually, in fact, just going to write down the steps for you so that when it comes to doing this later, you will essentially be able to understand what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to do this as Markdown. So here we go. And then just run. So first we're going to install the required libraries. These are the libraries we're going to use. So make sure Python is selected. And we've actually pinned the version of OpenAI because OpenAI at the moment is changing at such an alarming rate. And because I want you to be able to take this code and have it actually work, we've pinned the version of OpenAI we're going to use. So make sure you have those two libraries along with the OpenAI version and just run it. So it says last executed and the time of the execution. Next, so I'm just going to put this in Markdown again so we can see what we need to do. We're going to get the CSV file that we want to work with. So by this, essentially, I'm not going to write out my own inventory data. Instead, what I am going to do is take some existing data, okay? I am going to put the link to this in the video description below, so please visit this URL right here. In order to get this data, it is a CSV file called items tagged and captioned, and it will look like this. So we'll have the title of the item in the inventory. So for example, we have pickleball doormat, welcome doormat, absorbent non-slip floor doormat. And then we also have an image for it. We also have its style. It's a modern style, apparently. The material it's made from. We also have the color, the URL and where to find it on Amazon, and then some keywords in an array, as well as an image description. So it gives you an image description that says this is a rectangular doormat featuring a playful design. So there's a lot of information that we can use in our inventory, a caption for it too. All of this information we're essentially going to use. And if you scroll down, there's so much of it. So much of it. It would take us so long to write all this data up. So it's nice to actually just be able to use this made already CSV file that we can use for our inventory. We, however, need to view this as raw. So just click on raw here. This is what it looks like raw. You will see the URL has changed. So just copy that URL because that is important. Okay, great. So now in order to get the CSV file in its raw format, first off, let's import wget. And now let's get the CSV file path, which is the string of just the URL that you copied, right? So the raw should be in there. You should see the word raw in there. Make sure that is there. Okay, that is important. So that's the CSV file path. Now let's define our file path, just like so. And that's simply just going to be the end bit of this. So items tagged and captioned.csv. I'm just going to paste it in like so as a string as well. So we've got two things in here at the moment. Now we're going to say that if not os path exists and pass through the file path, so just pass through that. We're going to do wget download, then we're going to pass through CSV file path, and then we're going to call it the file path. Okay, and then we'll just print something so we know this has worked. Let's print file downloaded successfully. Else print file already exists in the local file system, just like that. Okay, and now we're just going to run it. So essentially we have downloaded the file successfully. So this took place because the path did not exist before. So essentially we downloaded the whole content of the CSV file path under the file path name. If it already existed, of course, it would say file already exists in the local file system. So great, that is done. We've got the content of that CSV file that we want to work with. Next, we're just going to remove any unnecessary columns because I really don't want some of them. I don't really want the keywords, so maybe let's just get rid of that. Okay, and the Python you need for this is import pandas as PD. And then we're going to get the CSV. So we need read CSV. And then we're going to pass through the CSV. So we're just going to get that file name again and pass it through. So that's now been saved to df. And now we can do df pop. And then we're going to pop off or remove keywords essentially. So that was one of the columns. I want to get rid of the whole column. So this one right here that holds an array of words. So let's get rid of keywords. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And we're also going to get df and use fill na and replace anything that has nan, because there's a few nans in there. And in place of it, we'll put true. Okay, so now if I run this, ta-da, you will see that the keywords column does not exist. Great. Next, so once again, I'm just going to put this in Markdown so you know what we're doing. I'm going to create the database and ingest data. So at the moment, like I said, we don't have a database in here, so nothing in our sales bot group. In order to create that database, we're going to use SQL. So I'm just going to paste that command so I don't make any spelling mistakes. We're going to, if an inventory database already exists, we're going to drop it. I'm going to create a database called inventory. So if I run this under databases, we should see a database called inventory show up. Okay? So now you might have to refresh this page, but under workspace 1, I should be able to see inventory show up under database. So let's just select that. So once that is selected, let's move on. The next thing I'm going to do, once again, I'm just going to paste this SQL code. There we go. We're going to use the inventory database. I'm going to create a table in it. So the table is called items. Once again, we're just going to drop it or get rid of it if it exists. I'm going to create a table from fresh called items. And in it, it's going to have a few columns. It's going to have a title that contains text, primary image column that contains text, style column that contains text, material column that contains text, color column, and so on, as well as an embedding vector column. So all of these, essentially, we're just going to use the information in here to loop over the data and whack it into our database in here. And for this one, we're actually going to create an embedding while doing so. Okay, so this vector embedding does not exist here. We're going to be creating that fresh. So just run this code and let's continue. So once again, in Markdown, next we're going to connect to the SingleStore database. So in order to do this, here is the code that is required. You're going to import everything from SQL Alchemy, and then using DB connection, you're going to create an engine and pass through the connection URL. So just run that. And now we're going to get df, which hopefully you remember we defined above, and get its values and use toList and call that and save all of that to a variable called data. Just run this code. And now we're just going to get each row in the data and essentially turn it into JSON data. So let's import JSON. And I'm going to essentially, like I said, for each row that exists in data, I'm just going to put it through JSON dumps. And let's save the output of this to JSON data, just like that. Make sure to spell JSON correctly. Okay, and just run that like so. Next, it's time to create embeddings of our data. So using Markdown, I'm just going to put create embeddings of our data. So there we go. And then I'm going to essentially import OpenAI. So the package import OpenAI. And I'm going to get OpenAI and use API key in order to pass through my API key as a string. Now, what we need to do is actually head on over to OpenAI. If you don't have an OpenAI account, I'm just going to show you what to do. Just head on over to Products, API Login, sign up. If you haven't used this before, you will get a bunch of free credits. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. For me, I'm just logging back in because I've used this many times. So here is what the platform will look like. Just hit API key. And then here, we're going to get an API key. So just go ahead and create a new key. I'm going to call this test. I'm going to select default project and create a secret key. And please do keep this safe, because if someone takes it, they will take all your credits, okay, all your free credits or your paid credits, depends if you've used your free ones up. So don't let them. So if someone does take it, or perhaps you, put it out on the open by mistake, then just delete it here. I, of course, will be deleting mine, so don't use mine. It won't be active anymore by the time I release this video. Okay, so just copy that. I'm just going to get rid of these now because you're just going to paste it in here. So just like that. Okay, there we go. So now essentially we're authorized to use OpenAI along with all of its wonderful methods and properties, and we're going to embed our data. So here is the code that you're going to need in order to do that. Essentially what we are doing is creating an vector embedding. So essentially a vector embedding on this occasion is us taking a whole bunch of text, so text that looks like this, for example, and we can create a vector embedding out of it that looks like an array of lots and lots of numbers. Now, each LLM will create a different bunch of numbers, okay? So this is very specific. This embedding is very specific to the LLM you're using. This one is going to be created by OpenAI and essentially represents the text on the left, or represents its semantic meaning, to be exact, okay? This means that if I, let's really simplify it, have the word dog here, and I create a vector embedding of dog, a computer in the past might have looked in the dictionary, and if I was like, return a word similar to dog, might have returned the word dot, for example, because lexicographically it is pretty similar. It's just closer to dog in the dictionary. However, as humans, if we had the choice between dot and cat, we would say, hopefully, that a dog is more similar to a cat over dot. So that's what we want computers to do too, and we do it thanks to this vector embedding. If you are interested more in learning about vector embeddings and what these numbers even mean, then do check out my video on this, okay? I have a 30-minute video specifically dedicated to vector embeddings and understanding them. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of what a vector embedding is. Once again, we're getting text and turning it into an array of lots of numbers. And this is going to help us do that. Okay, so we're using OpenAI and using the embed create method to pass through the input, which is going to be our JSON data that we defined here. And we're going to loop over it and use the text embedding 3 small model to essentially create embeddings of each row in our data. Okay, great. So let's just run that and let's move on. So now what are we going to do with this embedded data? Well, what we're going to do is let's actually format it a little bit. So this is the code that you're going to use. We're going to format it and save it under the variable combined data. So there we go. And run it through data frame. So we've just saved it under the variable s2df now. And this just means that when it comes to putting data back into our table called items in our database called inventory, that, of course we have our column names. So again, title, primary image, styles, on and so on. And then we have embedding. Well, we just want to rename the columns to the new column names. So just do that. Next, I'm going to have to do a bit of formatting again that will allow us to work with OpenAI's embeddings. And finally, add the embedding into the table. So that's what I'm going to do now. So once again, I'm just going to write it as markdown so you can understand. And once again, we're going to use SQL. So we're going to use the inventory database, and we're going to truncate the table we made called items. And now we're just going to put in the embedding into the embeddings column. Okay, so if it exists, append, and we've also defined a chunk size. Okay, so there we go, that was executed. You might need to just run through all of these again from the top and just run them in order to get that to work. Great. So now finally we can use this in order to get the inventory database and get the items table and just select 5 from it in order to check that has worked. So here we have 5 rows from it. And ta-da! You will see that we have also created an embeddings column in which we have a vector embedding. So like I said, an array of lots of numbers that will represent the text of all these columns that we see here so that we can find items that are similar to a vegan leather Parsons dining chair if we wish. So great, that is it. We are done. We have essentially added data into our database. Once again, if I go in here and inventory and select items and then hit sample data this time, you should be able to see all that data here with the embedding column filled. So now let's move on to building out our app that will take this data. So let's do it. So I'm going to use a command for this. It's actually create SingleStore DB app. So npx separated by space and then all one word, create SingleStore DB app. And let's call our app something. I'm going to call it SingleStore Sales Bot, just like that. And then here we're going to paste in our API key to communicate with SingleStore. In order to do that, if we go back here and under org, you will see API keys. And I'm just going to create a new one. So let's call this app key. And I'm going to choose to have this never expire. Just for tutorial purposes, you can choose a specific date if you wish. And I'm going to create that key. And here we go. We're going to copy it. Please keep it safe. For now, just paste it in like so and hit enter. So now this will spin up my app essentially with all the configuration that we need. Like I said, just wait for that to do its thing, because when it's done, essentially we will just tidy up a bit. It will have a lot of information in there. We just want to strip it back to basics so we can start fresh. So now let's go into SingleStore Sales Bot and just open it up. So you can do code dot if you are using VS Code, or if you're using WebStorm like me today, I'm just going to do this and I'm going to do file open. And then in WebStorm projects, I'm just going to select SingleStore Sales Bot. Okay, so there we go. Let's trust the project. Great. So here we are. This is looking good. Like I said, let's clean it up first. Let's get rid of everything that we don't need first in order so we can start fresh. So first off, what I am going to do is just in the source directory under the server, I'm going to essentially get the server here. So this is all the code that is in the server. I'm just going to get rid of any semicolons just because I don't like them. So there we go. And now our server.js file is looking good. I'm happy with that. So this is now done. Great. Now the roots. Now the roots, we're not going to need all of these because essentially all we're going to do is write our own connection. So here are all the connections. Okay, for example, you will see certain things such as delete database that we pass through into here. I don't want any of these. I am going to write my own. So in here, let's just scroll to the bottom. We are not going to need insert table. So let's delete that one. We are not going to need select table. So let's delete that one. We're not going to be selecting any tables. We're also not going to be creating tables. We've already created one called items. We're not going to be deleting databases from this app. So let's delete that. We're not going to be creating databases in here either. We already have one. Get databases. I mean, we can keep that if you want to just check this app is working. However, I'm not going to. I'm just going to delete it. So like so. And then we are going to keep stop SingleStore and connect SingleStore, as we'll actually be using it in this file, so it is necessary. Okay, so great, that is looking good. Again, in the router, we're going to delete a few things. So once again, I'm just going to make this bigger. I'm just going to get rid of any semicolons as we go through all these lines. We don't need import everything as fs. We do need the .env file. We don't need the body parser, so let's get rid of that. We are going to need express and the express router. However, we don't need to save anything under app, so we can get rid of that actually. Let's also define our database, so const database, as we aren't going to be creating any databases. We know that we already have one we want to use called inventory. So we can just save that like so. Now let's keep this just to check that our router is working. And now in here, well, actually we don't need to post anything to this endpoint. So let's get rid of that. Okay. Again, we're not going to be wanting to get all our databases, so let's get rid of that. Or posting to our databases, so let's get rid of that. Deleting any databases. We're also not going to be getting any tables. We don't care about that. Or posting anything to our tables. In fact, there's a lot of stuff we aren't going to be doing, so I'm just going to maybe get rid of all of this so we can start fresh. Okay, so this is everything that's currently in our routes.ts file. This is everything that is currently in our connection.ts file. We do have tab 9 helping us, so this is just tab 9 helpers. Okay, in here you should just be exporting a function called connect SingleStore and exporting a function called stop SingleStore as well. And once again, I'm just getting rid of any semicolons in here. Great, so once again, this is the full content of the connection.ts file. Just gonna maybe put this closer together so you can see the whole content of the file as it is right now, as well as seeing the whole content of the routes.ts file. Great, so let's work on the backend first, essentially getting some text from our front end, such as, for example, say we want to find something that is similar to a table in our inventory. We want to pass through the word table into here so that we could essentially turn table into a vector embedding and then search our database to compare vector embedding of table to a vector embedding of anything in our database that is similar to table and return back that item from our inventory. So that's what I'm going to do now. And in order to do that, well, first off, let's just start our backend, right? So in the package.json file, you will see some scripts. We need the dev script. So here it is. While you are here, you will also see all the packages and dependencies that we are using for this project. We don't need all of these. So in fact, I am going to delete some and add in a few more. So we're definitely not going to need any of these. So let's get rid of all the emotion and NUI ones here. Let's get rid of Axios and Bootstrap. Let's get rid of Chart.js and Day.js. We don't need that. We're not using Formic either, so delete those two. We're not using React Chart.js too. And I think that's okay for now. We're not using Yup either. Great. We are, however, going to add a few more. So make sure you are in the SingleStore sales bot project and do npmi OpenAI, as we know we're going to have to use that. And we're also going to have another package in here. It's what we're going to use in order to actually make calls to our telephone later on. And it's @cinch/SDK call. Make sure to spell it the same way. Okay, so there we go. And just hit enter. So that's the two packages that we are installing at the moment. Great, and just wait for that to do its thing. Okay, great. So now you will see OpenAI along with its version that we are using. I'm just going to make this smaller for now. And Cinch, along with the version that we are using for this tutorial. Make sure that you are using the same versions, okay? This is so important. If you're watching this in the future and you've installed this and you've installed all the dependencies and installed your own, and this is say 5 or something, it might not work. Just make sure to change this back to a 4, save this file, and then do npmi again to install all these versions of the packages. So if you need time to pause here and make sure that these are the same. So if something is not working, make sure that these are exactly the same. I will be putting this project in the description below so you can maybe copy it later on if you need. And we also have some dev dependencies here. Great, so once again, make sure yours are the same. Pause here if you need. Great, so now let's do npm run dev. So npm run dev, and this should start our project. Okay, cool, so now it's running on localhost 3000. So I could just do localhost 3000 just like so. I'm just going to inspect this for now, okay? We are getting some errors because we did remove MUI material styles. We won't see anything visually, even though we do have, I'm just going to minimize this, a bunch of components and pages in here. Once again, I think let's just get rid of everything. So all I'm going to do is in the index.ts file, this is the code that you're going to keep. So that is good. And under app.ts, well, let's just get rid of all this, and I'm just going to export the function. Let me just get rid of all of this for now. Okay, so here is all the code you should have in here. I personally prefer functional expression, so I'm just going to change this to be a functional expression and do export default app, making sure to spell default correctly. Okay, so this is all the code you should have in app.tsx. This is all the code you should have in index.tsx. And in fact, we don't need pretty much anything of this here. So I'm just going to delete all of these. So delete, just like that. We are going to add a new file called index.scss. Okay, so there we go. We've created an SCSS file, and now we should just connect it to the index.tsx file. So we're going to import index, that's right, SCSS. Cool. So now the styling from here will be applied. So once again, just 3 files in here, that's what they look like. And just 3 files in here, let's get rid of this. That's what they look like. Cool. So let's carry on, right? Let's write our root. First off, let's check this is working. So if I just grab this and we stick API hello, it will say SingleStore, because essentially that's what we wrote to say here. So we're essentially going to copy this, I guess, approach, right? We're just using Express. We're going to get router, because that's what we essentially define here from Express router. And this time, however, we're going to do router get, and then we're going to say that if we visit the URL or the endpoint API/database, and then / we're going to pass through some text. Make sure this is backticks. That is very important. In fact, I'm just going to minimize this and make this bigger for you. And then we're going to pass through some text here. And then, of course, we need to do request response. So just like that. This is going to be an async function eventually. But I mean, for now, maybe let's just do res JSON. And then let's get the request params from the URL and get the text. Essentially, whatever we pass through here is being saved here under request params, and we're just going to res JSON it. So for example, if I was to do API database, and you guessed it, towel, so I've obviously done this before, you will see the word towel here, right? Because this is the text, and we're using rec params text, we can get that text. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just spitting it out. So I could do something else. We can do bed, and it will come back with bed. So great, we're getting some text. And like I said, we now want to get that text and turn it into a vector embedding. And we're going to do so using OpenAI. So let's do it. So maybe let's save this as something. I'm going to save this as just text, just like that. So we can use it. And I'm going to use try, and then we're going to catch any errors. So catch error, console error, the error. And what are we going to try? Well, we're going to make a call to OpenAI. So first off, we need to import OpenAI here. So let's go ahead and do that. Import OpenAI from OpenAI. And now that we have that, all I'm going to do is use OpenAI, so the constructor, and pass through an object that is going to hold my API key. And my API key is essentially, well, I could just paste it in here. So I could just paste in like this, but obviously you probably want to deploy this at some point. So please do keep it safe. That's why I imported everything as .env. This is important because this is going to allow us, let's just get this, to use process env in order to look in our env files for the secret. So yes, maybe let's store it as OpenAI key. That is good to me, or API key if you want to be really precise. And here on the same level as the package JSON, I'm going to create a new file. It's .env. We're going to store our secrets. So in here, once again, just exactly the same way that you saved it. Okay, there we go. And ta-da, I'm just going to save this. We don't need that because it's implied that it's a string. So OpenAI key, just going to get rid of that. Make sure that it's spelled exactly the same way here. It's now reading it from that .env file. Great. And one more thing we need to do now is get .env and use config and call it in order for that to work. So wonderful. That is added. This should work. Let's move on. So I'm going to save this now as const OpenAI because essentially now we're getting OpenAI, getting all of its methods and properties, which we can now use because we passed through an API key and storing it under OpenAI, which means we can now use OpenAI and the embeddings create method that comes with it. I just need to pass through an object. So now we need to await OpenAI and save the response as something. So I'm just going to save it as response, super easy. And the object we need to pass through into here, well, we need to pass through the model. So we're going to pass through the model we're going to use for that. So here we go. And then we're also going to pass through the input. Well, we know that this is just going to be the text, right? So we could just pass it through like that. It is a string. And then we're also going to have to pass through the encoding format. So encoding format, just like so. And we're going to put float. Okay, the model we're going to be using for this is the latest one from OpenAI. It is text embedding 3 small. And then let's maybe just, what do we want to do with the response? I think for now, I'm just going to console log it out. So console log out the response. Okay, so great. I'm just going to save this. Let's get up our terminal. And this time, if I visit bed, I want to make sure that a text embedding or a vector embedding is created from this. So we've sent over the text bed, and then we've console logged out the response. Here is my whole object. We just want to actually get the embedding. So we need to use dot notation. So dot data, this is an array. So dot data, let's go into the array. And I just want to get the embedding, right? So that's what I want to do. It's an array of lots and lots of numbers. So let's run that again. And ta-da, here is essentially a vector embedding of the word bed. It is super long. Who knew that bed would need so many numbers? But we did it. So we've essentially got the word bed and turned it into a vector embedding. Great. The next step is to look into our database to compare it to everything in our inventory and have it return back that something is most similar to bed. So let's do it. So in order to do this, maybe we don't need to console log this out anymore. Let's just save it. So const embedding, there we go. And the array will be saved to this. And now what I'm going to do, in fact, I'm actually going to write a connection for this. So let's actually write it here. I'm just going to let's move this up maybe. So let's do export async function read data, as we want to be reading the data in our database. And this is going to take an object. It's going to take a connection. It's also going to take the database name. And it's also going to take the embedding that we just created, right? Because those are three things that we want to pass on to this function. Let's also define the types of this. So in fact, I'm just going to copy this like so. The connection, if it exists even, is just going to be my SQL connection, which we actually imported above with the MySQL package. The database is going to be a string. It's actually the string of inventory. And embedding, I'm just going to put any, okay? I'm not going to be super strict. So cool, there we have it. And the function, well, we're going to try and catch again. So let's try some things and let's catch any errors. It's console error, the error. So we can, and maybe let's also just return the error as well. So we essentially, first off, let's define the close connection as false. And also if there is no connection to our database, well, we're going to await and connect to SingleStore and just pass through as an object our database name because we're connecting to that specific database, so the database of inventory. Now, once we have connected to SingleStore to the database, I'm going to save this as the connection, okay? So there we go. And we'll put close connection as true. Great. Now, in order to actually look into all our rows in our data, I'm going to use await con execute. So just like that. I'm going to save it as rows. However, we're going to destructure that array. And in here, we're using backticks. We're going to write an SQL command. So we're going to use select. I'm just going to move this up. Select title. Then we're going to use dot product and pass through the embedding that we actually passed through into this function. So on this occasion, it would be the word bed as a vector embedding. And then we're going to use JSON array pack in order to essentially look in the JSON, and then into JSON array pack, we're going to pass through the embedding once more. However, the embedding this time, just use single quotes for now, and then use the text brackets again, and then the $sign, and then we're going to put in some code, and that is to pass through the embedding like that. So I appreciate this looks complicated. Please take your time, because if you make a mistake, this will not work. And then we're just going to do as similarity from the table items. I'm going to order by similarity so we can get the most similar one, and we'll do it descending, right? Because we want the most similar one to be on top, and we just want one back. So let's limit by one. Okay, again, super long. Make sure it's in backticks. This is the full piece of code. I'm just going to go really slowly. Please pause here if you need. You might need to, because it is a lot to put on one line. Okay, great. Okay, so that's really it. And then we're going to put if close connection is true, await, and we're going to stop SingleStore and pass through the connection. Cool, and then all I'm just going to do is just console log the rows, get the first item right, because we just want one back, and then just get its title. And then maybe let's return it as well. So return this too. Amazing. So that, in fact, is the full code. That is everything that is in the try and catch, which is in the function called read data, which is an async function that we pass these three things into, okay? So now we can use the read data function in roots. So let's just import it from the connection file and let's use it here, Okay, so on line 29. So read data, like I said, it takes a few things. It takes the database, it takes the embedding, and then it takes the connection, but we have that in the other file, so we don't need to worry about that. And then it's an async function, right? So we need to await its response. Let's maybe just save it SQL response. We're going to save it as SQL response. Let's just maybe save it as SQL response. And now we could just console log out the SQL response. However, I'm just going to do backticks. I'm actually going to use it to write a prompt instead. The user marked that they were interested in, and then let's put the text, which as we know is bed, full stop, the most similar item from the inventory of items is, and then we'll put the response back. So whatever came back to us from our database, which we saved as SQL response, is going to show up here. So if the most similar item to a bed was a lounger, then lounger would show up here. And then I'm also going to add something to the prompt of please recommend, making sure to spell recommend correctly. So recommend this to the user and only this item. Great. So that is the full prompt. That is looking good. Let's save this maybe as the prompt. So const prompt equals, and now I'm going to pass this prompt into OpenAI. So await OpenAI, just to make it more human-like and readable, right? Otherwise, it would literally, like I think we could just return back lounger, right? Our app could just return lounger. So if you don't want to use OpenAI, you don't have to, but I do want to make it more human readable to, be like, oh, I think you should buy the lounger rather than just lounger. So OpenAI chat completions is what we're going to use, completions, and then create, and we're going to create an object. So once again, when we need to pass through the model, model, and let's actually use GPT-4o this time, as it is the cheapest at the time of writing. So we're passing through the model, and we're also going to pass through some messages. So messages, this is going to take an array of objects that look like this. It's going to have a role. First off, we're going to start off with the system. So we're just going to set the tone really. So let's pass through the content as well. And then our second message is actually going to be from us, the user. And essentially, we've already written the prompt, so I'm just going to put it through here. The content here, however, I'm just going to put you are a helpful assistant to kind of prep the LLM into getting into the right vibe, I guess. So cool. That's essentially what we're going to do. Make sure to put a comma there. And let's save the response of this under completion, just like so. So now we can console log this out for now. I'm just going to console log it out, to be fair, just to check everything's working. Console log completion. This will actually come back with a really complicated object. I've done this many times, so I know that the object has a property called choices, which has many things. I'm going to get the first item from it, and I'm going to get message content, just to get back the message's content, which will be a string. Cool. So now let's check this out. However, there are a few more configuration things we need to do in order to actually fully connect to our database. So we need to do them in here. We need to do them on the connect to SingleStore function. So you will see here that we are passing through a host and a password. However, we haven't actually saved the host and the password anywhere. We're also actually going to have to pass through the port. So it's going to make this bigger. Port. Let's say this is process env db port, just like that. We've also defined the user as admin. That is fine. Let's also actually define the database. And we can save this here too, process env database. This we actually have to pass through a number as process env store stuff as strings, and this has to be a number. Okay, so now let's head over to our .env file and let's add some things, right? So we need to add the host. So let's put the host, the password to our SingleStore database, the DB port, which I already know is 3306, but I'll show you where to get that from. The database, which of course we know is inventory. And I think that should be it. So in order to get these, just head on over to SingleStore once more. And we need to essentially connect to workspace one. So let's click connect. I'm going to connect my app, so your app. And then let's select Node.js. And ta-da, here's all the information that we'll need. So here's the host. Let's go ahead and paste that under host. Here is also the port, which we already have, and the password and the database. Database name we have, the admin password, however. I'm just going to copy that. Okay, so that is now done. And once again, I'm just going to paste that in like so. So that is everything that we need. And now this means that this should work. So this root right here should be good. I'm also going to just edit here and allow access from anywhere just for the tutorial purposes. Okay, so just make sure to have that the same. So let's try it out. Let's pass through the text of bed and then let's look in here. And great, so amazing. We get an item back. The closest thing to a bed in our database is this right here. So we get the text, I noticed you're interested in a bed based on your preference. I could recommend the Bednovitz twin box spring. It features 5-inch low pro metal. Okay, this is great. There's a lot of information here about it. Cool. So amazing. I think this is looking good. We are console logging this out at the moment. However, what we actually want to do is send this over to Cinch so it can call us with this information. So I think we will do that last. However, first I actually, instead of just passing through a word, through here, I want to build out a front end where we actually select this word from a list of things. So let's do it. Let's go back to building out our front end. So our front end is going to be super simple. I'm just going to, in fact, just shut these down so we can concentrate fully on the front end now. So let's get up our app.tsx file. We're just going to be doing everything in here. Like I said, it's such a basic app because we really just wanted to focus on the back end for this project. So let's do it. I'm just going to import everything as React from React. We're also going to be importing use state from React, so we can do that, and import items and keywords from a file that I'm going to create called categories.ts. Okay, make sure that says React. So let's go ahead and create this file, categories.ts. It should be on the same level as the app.tsx file. So categories.ts, we don't need to add an X because we won't be using any JSX in here. And in here, well, this is simply just going to create a bunch of items that we can choose from a drop-down. So it's an array, and each item is going to be represented by this object. It's going to have the name. This is going to be mainly for like coding reasons and picking out values from inputs. So I'm going to have plant and pots, and then as the display name, so let's have display name. It's going to be something a little bit more user-friendly and readable, plants and pots. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this for a bunch of things. So maybe I'm just going to maybe copy and paste this out a few times. Just bear with me. We'll have home electronics. Let's also have home electronics. Let's also have kitchen appliances, maybe. So kitchen appliances. appliances, kitchen appliances, appliances. We're not going to have too many pet products and then pet products. In fact, I'm just going to copy out the ones that I already have here just to save you some time. Okay, so these ones, we also have cookware, home textiles, bathroom products, and outdoor products. So pause it if you wish. So those are all the items. We're also going to have keywords. Okay, so the keywords are going to be just kind of like a vibe, I guess. So for example, one vibe is boho, one vibe is retro. Once again, each one's going to be represented by an object that has a name and a display name. So name, and then like I mentioned, display name. So we can have plastic, and then let's put the others. So the others I have are vegan leather, metallic, boho, glam, retro, luxurious, and gold. And now let's export both of these. So I'm going to export as an object, items, and keywords, as we can only export one thing. So I've exported an object and now we can get them in here. So there we go, items and keywords from categories TS, right? We don't need this anymore. So there we go, we've imported that. Great, so we're in fact just gonna have a super simple form. So let's create a form just like so. The form is of course going to have an on submit, like most forms should. That's going to handle our submit, so handle submit. So maybe let's define our handle submit up here. So const handle submit equals, and there we go. We will write that later. We just need to prevent the whole form from reloading the page, and it will do that thanks to ePrevent default. So let's pass that through. Cool. In my form, I'm going to have an H1 that says get your perfect item. And now I'm going to use the field set so that we can essentially keep certain inputs together. Let's also add a legend to this so we know what's going on in this field set. It will say pick an item you are most interested in. Okay, so that is the legend. And then we're going to essentially map out all the items. Okay, so let's get the items, which of course we've got from the categories file. And each item we are going to map out onto an input essentially. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to map it out onto an input, just like so. Do I need the index? I don't think so. I think we can just use the name as an index as it is unique. However, we do need to define the type on the item. This is an object, so let's create an object which is going to have the name right as a string and also the display name as a string. Okay, so that's a bit of TypeScript for you. Just make sure to wrap it all in parentheses like so. Great, so that input, in fact, I am going to wrap it in a div and just pass through the key of the item name. This should be like so. And there should be a capital name like this. So we've got the key. I'm also just going to use the input value and put in the item name as the value. Other things I'm going to do is actually add the type of radio to this so that we can only pick one and one is selected. Let's also give each one an ID. Again, I'm just going to use the item name for this as it is unique. So item name. We also actually have the name, right? So the name is going to be the item name. And if it's checked, we just want to show it's checked. Well, if the item name equals the chosen item, then this should be checked. But of course, we're not actually collecting the chosen item anywhere yet. So perhaps let's do that up here. Const chosen item set chosen item use state. And let's just pass through the state as an empty string for now. This, of course, will take strings. So string, we are just setting the type. Great. So, well, the chosen item at the moment is a string, but in order to change it, we use set chosen item. And I think on a change of this, we can essentially set chosen item with the item name. Okay, so there we go. If we interact with this, we change this chosen item to be the item name of the input. And if item not checked, item name deeply equals the chosen item, then we know that this should appear as checked in the display. Great. So if we look in here and refresh, this is what we get at the moment. We also need to add a label for these inputs. So here I'm going to add a label, and then we're going to use HTML4, and then we're going to match this with the ID of the input, which is actually also the item name. So that's how we match the label to the input. And then as the label, we're going to get the item display name this time because we want it to be kind of readable. So that's what it should look like. And now the checked visibility is showing because chosen item will equal the item name as well. So now one of these will be picked only. Okay, we can't pick multiple. Let's do the same for the keywords. So this should be easy. Okay, we're just going to create another field set essentially. So you can copy this, or let's just do it again for our muscle memory, right? So field set, we're going to have a legend as well. This one is going to say pick which of these you are feeling most. And now we're going to essentially map out the keywords. So let's grab the keywords map, and each keyword, of course, this looks like this. It has a name, which is a string, and then also has a display name. Make sure to spell it correctly this time, which is a string. And we're going to map it onto something. Make sure to wrap this in parentheses as well. And this is looking good. So now we're going to create a div. I feel we are missing a parenthesis here. And this div is going to have the key of the keyword name. And we're essentially wrapping an input. I think maybe it's fine just to copy all this. I'm going to copy all that along with the label and just whack it in here. And I'm just going to change item to be keyword each time. Okay, because essentially this should be fine. However, we don't want to set the chosen item this time. Maybe set chosen keyword is better, and then we can change it here. So now we, of course, we need to change this and chosen keyword. And up here, I'm just going to copy this, change this to be chosen keyword, and set this to be chosen keyword. Okay. So now we can console log chosen item and chosen keyword, and they should show up. So once again here, I can do like that, and both are showing up. So I've selected pet products in metallic. Now, we essentially want to send those two words over as one string, and we want to do so in the handle submit. So let's actually save some text. Let's use chosen item. And then I'm going to add the string, just put a space there of in the style of, and then another space, chosen keyword. So that is the text we essentially want to send over to our backend, right? So instead of bed or instead of towel, and we can do so essentially by await fetch. And then essentially we need to copy this. So let's copy that. I'm just going to paste in here, but in backticks, so make sure that is a backticks because we want to replace this with code. So we use $, and then we're just going to pass through the text. Okay, so that's what we are doing. And then let's get the response of this. So response equals, this has to now be an async function as we use the await keyword here. And then the response, well, what we're going to do is get the JSON from it, but this is a promise, so we need to await it. And then let's get the data. So const data equals. And I'm just going to console log out that data, okay? Because I just want to see it. Great. So perhaps we should also put this in a try and catch. So try something and catch error console error error, and I'm just going to whack all of that in here. So all of this just goes in here, and there we go. That is my whole handle submit function right here. Great. So amazing. Let's maybe also not console log that here. I'm just going to console log the text. We can kind of see what we are passing through here. But essentially now I can do, let's also just add an input to submit this. So input type submit. Okay, so maybe let's do pet products in boho submit. So pet products in the style of boho, and that's being passed over to our backend. And the closest thing to it is, if you're looking for a stylish boho inspired pet product, I recommend checking out the LR Resources Cavado Metallic Braided Poof Automodern Gray and White. So we are getting something from our database. This is great. This is all looking so good. The last thing we need to do is actually, instead of just have it printing out here, we're going to have our phone call us with this. So let's do it. So we don't need this anymore. We just need to work actually on the roots. So under roots, we're console logging this out at the moment. Like I said, we don't want to do that. We in fact want to make a call, right? So maybe let's save this as, I'm just going to make this bigger for you. Const call text equals, and I'm going to get that. So it will either equal that or undefined. And now we're going to make the call. So in order to make the call, well, we do need to sign up to something. Don't worry, it does give you a free trial. And essentially we need to import Cinch client. So up here, import Cinch client from Cinch SDK store, which we've already imported. We can now use this. So let's go all the way back down here. New Cinch client. We're going to open it up. We're going to make an object because we need to essentially pass through an application key, which is of course going to be, well, we can store it in the process env file. Process env Cinch API key. And then we're also going to pass through the application secret, okay? And it's process env cinch app secret, okay? So once we have that, let's save it to cinch client once more. Okay, so we can use it in our file. So let's do it. I'm just going to head over to cinch.com and let's try it for free. Okay, so again, this is just using a free sign up, Ania Kubo. Let's go ahead and do Ania at code with Ania.com. Let's create a strong password. And then I've read the terms and conditions and hit agree, making sure your country is selected. So cool. So great. Once you have confirmed your email, it will ask you to put in your mobile number. So please go ahead and do that. Of course, I am going to not show you this. And now if we hit send, we should get a verification code to our phone numbers. Next, select your role and what you are here to do, and we are done. Okay, now let's get to styling this up. So again, this is going to be so basic. It's going to say everything in here is going to have the same font family. So put font family just like so. And I'm going to put Verdana. And then we're going to have Arial, Shore, and sans serif as a backup. Okay. And then the body. Well, I'm just going to remove any margin and padding. So margin 0, padding 0. I'm going to do display flex to initialize flex box, which means I can now justify everything from left to right using center and everything from top to bottom using center. But this will not work without height. So I need to assign a height of 100 viewport height. Okay. These two will not work without that. And this will not work with that on this occasion. Now the form itself, I'm just going to make this really basic again. Let's just give it a width of 500 pixels. So I'm hard coding it. And then a box shadow that I already have picked out, which is this. A border radius to round it off of 20 pixels. Let's put a border solid of 0.5 pixels. RGBA 000 0.18. Let's give it some padding of 50 pixels. And let's do text align center as well. Okay, so that is the form. Now let's grab each field set. And I'm going to do display flex wrap, so they kind of wrap all over each other. Okay, then don't just show up in a column. And I'm going to also do justify content center to center them from left to right. Border, each one is going to not have a border because at the moment it does. And as a margin, I'm going to put 30 pixels on the top and bottom and 0 from the left and right. The legend itself, I'm going to just add a margin of 7 pixels. And let's also change the font size. Okay, I'm just going to change it to be 13 pixels like so. Cool. Now each option, so anything with the class of option, which I am yet to add here. So I think the option should go on here. So class name option, and then also on this div right here, class name option. It's going to have a font weight of bold, a background color of hash EF, a padding of 10 pixels, a margin of 5 pixels, a border radius to round it off of 10 pixels, and a font size, which is slightly larger. Let's go 14 pixels. So that is the option that I'm going to give each one of these. And then all P elements are going to have the font size of 13 pixels, which I am yet to add, but I will be adding that in a bit. And now any input, we do need to put an input for the telephone. So this is going to have the type of tel for telephone. I'm actually going to make sure that the width of this is 100% of the parent. Padding is going to be 15 pixels. Let's put the border radius as 10 pixels. I'm also going to put the margin as 0, 0, 20 pixels. 0. The font size is going to be 13 pixels. And the border is going to be solid 0.5 pixels. Hash 808080. Cool. And now also the input type of submit. So input type submit. Once again, maybe let's have these three. So I'm just going to copy that and put border non. Font size, I'm gonna have 15 pixels. Font weight, I'm gonna have as bold. Color, I'm gonna have to have a hash FFF for white, and then I'm gonna have a background, which is actually just gonna be a gradient, okay? Because I want it to look kind of like this cool gradient color. So wonderful. If I now look at the app, it looks like this. So cool. I love it. And let's just add a place for the telephone. So let's go back in here and right at the bottom. So still in the form above the input type with submit, I'm gonna have a P element. And then I'm just gonna have give us your phone number so our AI can give you a call instantly with our shop item that we think you will like most. And then I'm gonna have an input, and this is gonna have the type tell. Let's have a placeholder, sure. So placeholder, so people know what format to put the phone number in, right? Because we need to have a plus 971 and then 50. So 50 587 5403. And then on change of this, we also want to store it somewhere. So on change of this, I'm going to set phone number to be E, so pass through the E target value. So whatever we type into here. So great. And we can also obviously make this required. So now let's actually set the phone number in here. So const phone number, set phone number, use state is going to be a string. And we're actually going to add the phone number to this text. So let's also do add, and then let's pick something out by and tell double dots, and then just stick the phone number. So that is being added to the text that is being sent over, okay, here. Cool, so that is a lot. Let's get rid of that. I think we can get rid of this now, so let's get rid of that. The app looks like this now. Just gonna zoom out more for you. And then back in the roots, we're going to await Cinch client. Let's just make this bigger. It's going to use the voice callouts, TTS. And then we're going to pass through a whole object. Let's save this as the const call response equals. And we're going to have TTS call request body. It's going to be an object. It's going to have the methods. We need to pass through a method. This is going to be TTS callout. And then TTS callout is an object. Here we're going to put our phone number from the app, so not our phone number. And then the destination is going to have the type of number and the endpoint of whatever phone number we pass through from the front end. Okay, so I'm just going to put phone number for now, but we need to actually take it out from the text. And then we're also going to, as the text, just pass through the call text, right? So just pass that through like so. And then I think maybe we can console log the call response. So console log. Let's pass through JSON stringify call response, just so we can see what's going on in here. But yeah, this actually needs to be a string. So let's define our phone number, right? So the phone number, we actually need to get this from the text, but we can do so by picking out that weird and tell ... sign. So let's pick out the prompt text, const prompt text, and we just want to essentially get the whole text and use substring to split out the text index of anything before and tell this. So that's the prompt text, and then we need the phone number, which is going to be text split anything after that. We're just going to pop off. Otherwise, it's just an empty string. Cool. So now instead of just passing through the text, we're going to pass through the prompt text and the phone number because we've split that out. We're passing through here. We need to put in our phone number here also. So let's go back to Cinch. So here is my platform. I have 2 euros tax credit, which is great. And what we need to do is use the voice and video. So here, get started. We do need to do a bunch of things. So let's get started. First off, I need to get a free test number. So click here, and then this is my free text number. So make sure to save it. So get free text number. Okay, paste it in like so. Now, another thing you're going to do under voice and video and under apps is actually get your secret key. And in the .env file, so this one, I'm just going to create Cinch API key. And we're also going to have our Cinch app secret, okay? So just paste that in like so and get your secret and just paste that in like so as well. So I think we're now ready to do this. So let's go back to our app. Okay, just hit refresh. Let's do plants and pots, vegan leather. Now I'm just going to put in my actual phone number because we want to make a call to that number. Okay, hit submit. And then you should get a call to your mobile phone right now. Okay, so mine is ringing. And if you listen to it, it should give you the response back suggesting an item that is similar. So mine is getting Modway Baronet button tufted vegan leather Parsons dining chair in grey. And of course, OpenAI is recommending it to me in a more human-like way. So cool. I hope this was fun. I love the fact that we get called on the phone with this. I think it's a cool sales bot that doesn't really require you to do any selling at all. It's just a nice feature to have. And if you want to take this to the next level, I know that Cinch does allow you to essentially have Cinch call you, and then you can pick from items. So you could have something like, would you like an agent to call you? You can select yes, and then we'll forward that call onto your mobile phone. So you only deal with the people who selected yes. Awesome. So that is a feature for you to try out by yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this. Yeah, let me know what you think in the description below.